Thank you, Anas Corla, and I'm grateful for the opportunity to raise this particularly sensitive and urgent and pressing issue, which has become more and more obvious as time goes by. And I'm not attributing blame to any particular individual, the Minister or anybody else. I know that everything has been done that can be done, and that there were difficulties because of COVID in the last year. However, needs must, and the situation now emerging is very serious from the point of view, first of all, starting with parents who may have a child with severe sensory and emotional difficulties and cannot find a place for that child, a location, a safe location where the child will receive care and therapy, and it must be in-house care. And the number of parents who continually approach us at the end of their tether in trying to deal with this situation, and they try to deal with it on their own. The next part is the one of teenagers or adolescents, who again may have difficulties of a serious nature, and it is again impossible to find a place. There may be eating disorders that may be variously affected and have sporadic attacks that they have no control over. And the unfortunate adolescents themselves, they don't understand what's happening. They don't. It's happening around them. But it's the life in which they operate. It's their small little world. And as it unfolds in front of them, it's not great. And the problem is this, that the services are not there to address the issues on time. And then we move to the next stage, the older adolescent and young adult, where they in turn have mental health issues. They haven't any experience of life. They don't know whether this is normal or not. But they are where they are, and they know one thing, that it's not a happy place to be. And their parents stay with them, and they try to help them out in every way possible. And sadly, and I've dealt with a case like this in the last couple of weeks, sadly, very many of them end up in prison and are detained awaiting a prison court hearing. And I think it's an appalling situation. And again, I want to emphasise, this is not the fault of the Minister, the Present Minister, or this goes back about 20 years. Goes back about 20 years, growing demand all the time, failure to address the issue on an ongoing basis because there were other competing demands. Of course there were competing demands, and we all accept that. But what I'm going to ask the Minister this morning, Alas Cancor, is this. I think that we need to make a special effort to identify this cohort of people who are desperate, and their parents are desperate, and their siblings are desperate, and they find themselves in a situation where they are unable to cope. And the stress on the families is huge and growing, and the stress on the individuals. And very often, in many cases that we've dealt with, they end up with seriously harming themselves, or worse still, finding an ultimate way out that doesn't solve any problem but creates more. And the problem now is as I see it, Alas Cancor, is this: we need to make a salutary move on this issue now. It's not one of these things that can wait. We need to deal with it to address the issues, and I've only given a small example of them. Everyone in this House has multiples of the same experiences. So let's do something, or whatever has to be done, to put in place the measures that are needed to accommodate the needs of such patients, and to recognise their difficulties for what they are, and to address the issues in a meaningful way. First off, let's do it now, and let's give them hope. Let's give them hope for the future. Let's give them some indication that society cares for them and is prepared to help them in a meaningful way. Thank you.
Good morning, and I want to thank the Deputy for raising this issue today, and I'm taking it on behalf of Minister Butler. But at the start, I will preface, we do care. Society does care, and this government does care. The continued development of specialist services for eating disorders, including improved access and shorter waiting lists, remain a key priority for the government. Minister Butler, Minister for Mental Health and the Department of HSE. In response to the growth in cases presenting to mental health services, the HSE developed a national clinical programme for eating disorders in partnership with the College of Psychiatrists of Ireland and Bodywise, the national support group for people with eating disorders. The eating disorder model of care was launched in 2018, and £5.7 million has been allocated to the implementation of this programme to date. The clinical programme will establish an eating disorder network and 8 adult teams and 8 CAM teams in total. 1.77 million has been invested to date in eating disorder specialist posts, with 21.8 whole-time equivalents now in place. Of critical importance is that Minister Butler secured the balance of 3.94 million to be made fully available to the programme and will enable further investment in specialist posts throughout this year. This comprises the completion of the 3 existing specialist eating disorder teams and the establishment of 3 new teams. The 3 existing specialist eating disorder teams are located in CHO4 CAMS, CHO7 CAMS and CHO6 adults. The 3 new teams in development include the adult teams in CHO9, CHO4 and the CAMS team in CHO2. Recruitment for all of the teams is progressing well, and each CHO is fully committed to this process and is on target to have staff recruited by year end. While there is much yet to be done, the progress made to date with the existing teams has already had a significant impact. 2020 saw a 43% increase in the number of eating disorder assessments compared to 2019, with twice as many people starting treatment. This trend has continued during 2021. Of note, specialist outpatient treatment has been found to be the most effective and fast way for most people with eating disorders to recover. Over 90% of the people with eating disorders can be supported in the community, avoiding more serious inpatient treatment. However, a small number of people may require inpatient care for short periods for structured refeeding and stabilisation. Currently, CAMS inpatient care is provided in the 4 regional CAMS units across the country. Lindara, Merlin Park have dedicated a number of beds, 6 and 8 beds respectively, and while there are no dedicated beds in the remaining 2 CAMS, all beds are available to eating disorder admissions. A further 8 beds are planned for an eating disorder unit in the National Children's Hospital. I am also aware that Minister Butler recently visited CAMS eating disorder teams in Dublin and Cork to get an understanding of how the service operates on the ground. Adults who require inpatient care are admitted in local general adult approved centres. CHO6 has 3 dedicated beds for eating disorders based in St Vincent's University Hospital. The number of adult beds will increase, including an additional 3 beds in Vincent's, 5 beds in North Dublin and 5 beds in Galway and 5 beds in Cork. These beds will be linked to eating disorder hubs. Significant enhancements has also been achieved in the area of digital support for people with eating disorders. In March 2020, the free national clinical programme Eating Disorder and BodyWise app was launched. Overall, telehealth has rapidly enhanced, and existing service users can access specialist eating disorder teams who are providing ongoing care throughout the pandemic. More than 500 therapy sessions have been delivered to date. The development of all aspects of mental health services continues to be a priority for Government. Minister Butler, the Department of Health and the HSE, including specialist service eating disorders. This is reflected in the current programme for Government over a national mental health policy. Thank you, and I'll let you come back in there.
Thank you, Minister, for your extensive reply on behalf of your colleague. And I accept, in fact, that the Minister is doing everything possible and is very active on the ground. No matter how active you are, as we all know in this House, there are things that get away from you. And very often, the way things are supposed to work, it does not necessarily follow that that's the way they work. But there's another complication as well for the young adults and adults, is if they have an addiction. If there's an addiction, they won't be taken in most places. They have to seek treatment for that. So you have to take time out in order to get treatment for that area first. Otherwise, they won't be accommodated at all. This is crazy stuff. And I know this is, and I'm not blaming the Minister at all. The fact of the matter is this: the regulations and the exigencies within which we work are really ridiculous, and they don't really address the massive challenge that's there in front of us. And can I put it this way? I have one particular case who the individual is in prison because he has a mental problem. He got into a situation where he broke the law, as will happen, as has happened many times in the past, and will happen in the future. And the sad part about it, he's probably going to receive a prison sentence. Having done no other wrong than being unable to access treatment for his particular condition. And that's a recent thing, and there are numerous others where we all have to do it. To join parents at night, sometimes up to midnight, in hospitals where they've been waiting all day or for 2 or 3 days in order to gain access. So it's a challenge all the way. So what I'm saying, I compliment the Minister for the work that's been done. But I would say this: there's a need to poke the bear another bit and identify the snags that are there, and ensure that whatever is being done now, that the efforts are redoubled in a way that brings the treatment necessary within the reach of the parents and the siblings and all of the families of those affected. Thank you.
Minister to conclude.
So the continued development of specialist service for eating disorders, including improved access and shorter waiting lists, remain a key priority for the Government Minister for Mental Health, Mary Butler, the Department of Health and the HSE. As stated, 3.94 million is fully available to the National Clinical Programme for Eating Disorders and will enable further investment and specialist posts throughout the year. Only last night, Deputy Minister Butler stood here on the floor of the Dáil, and she acknowledged in relation to waiting lists that there is one fundamental flaw. That is the recruitment process. It takes 50 weeks to recruit a person into a post. And in all fairness, she is successful in securing the funding, but actually the funding is only as good as the people when they arrive in the doors of their units. So I have announced an awful lot and re-announced what Minister Butler has completely committed to, but until such time as the people arrive in post, we will not see that delivery of service. We will not see relief for those families whatsoever, no matter what age they're presenting at, whether it's at their local hospitals looking for other support, whether it is also getting into the CAMS team. And I also noticed there, Deputy Durkan, I listed out a number of CHOs, but I noticed your own CHO wasn't included in that. So it is something that needs to be addressed at a local level. So that is also just something that sparks me. But in relation to dual diagnosis, I think there isn't a deputy in this Parliament that hasn't been impacted by the dual diagnosis as well. And we all know that when you have a mental health issue, there is always something else coupled with it, and there is usually an underlying condition, and it breaks out in other acts, whether it is in drinking, whether it's in drugs, whether it is in antisocial behaviour, but it comes through in other formats. And there needs to be an understanding and an empathy, but we need to look at the dual diagnosis. But I will just finish by saying, when you talk about poking the bear, I think we have the right minister in the right role to do that.